Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are setting off on a truly fascinating journey into the past. We're going to explore businesses that aren't just old, but businesses that actually predate the nation itself. Now, if you love learning how the past shapes our present, you know that history gives us the absolute best blueprint for the future. Well, today's look at extreme corporate longevity is going to completely challenge how you view American history. Let's get into it.
So, to kick things off, what do a farm, a cymbal maker, and a tavern have in common? I know, it sounds exactly like the setup to a joke, right? But the reality is actually far more impressive. In our modern world, where most new businesses honestly don't even last a single decade, these three share an incredible, almost unbelievable secret of survival. They have weathered centuries, literally centuries, of economic shifts, wars, and massive technological revolutions.
To really wrap our heads around the scale of their achievement, let's just think about the year 1776. The year the United States was officially born. We're basically programmed to think of this as the absolute beginning of the American story, right? It's that dramatic benchmark we use to measure the entire timeline of our nation. But when it comes to American commerce, 1776 is actually just somewhere in the middle of the story for the institutions we're looking at today.
When you look at the founding dates, it's wild. These massive titans of American business were actively up and running for well over a century before the Revolutionary War even started. You've got the Shirley Plantation Farm operating down in Virginia way back in 1613. Then there's the Avedis Zildjian Music Company, you probably know them for their cymbals, which was actually founded all the way back in 1623 in Istanbul before eventually moving over to the US. And Tuttle's Red Barn, they've been farming in New Hampshire since 1632. These aren't just businesses, they are literal foundational pillars of history.
Section 1. The Heart of Colonial Life, featuring the White Horse Tavern. To really grasp how a single business survives for hundreds of years, we're going to zoom in on an incredibly colorful case study today. We are heading over to Newport, Rhode Island, to examine the oldest continuously operating tavern in America. Now, before we dive into the timeline, it's totally vital to understand the context of the era. Back in the 17th and 18th centuries, a tavern was not just a place to grab a quick drink after a long day. Taverns were the essential, beating hubs of colonial life. We're talking meeting places, major news centers, and intense political arenas. Merchants, sailors, citizens, they all gathered under these roofs. Sure, some definitely came for the ale, but so many came to exchange ideas and quite literally shape the future of the colonies. Section 2. Pirates, Politicians, and Patriots, a 350-year journey. As we unpack the history embedded in these walls, we are going to see a wildly unexpected and, frankly, swashbuckling history. This isn't some dusty, boring timeline, guys. It's a story of pure survival through some of the most chaotic periods you could possibly imagine. What's really fascinating here is how rapidly the property's whole purpose evolves. It was originally built in 1652 as a simple, two-story, two-room residence for a guy named Francis Brinley. But just a bit later, by 1673, William Mays Sr. acquired it and completely converted it into a tavern. Fast forward to 1702, it turns into a literal pirate haven. And by 1776, a war zone occupied by mercenaries. So let's unpack a couple of these incredible milestones. Let's start with 1702. William Mays succeeds his dad as the innkeeper and gets a license to sell, quote, all sorts of strong drink. But William was absolutely not your average small business owner. He was a notorious pirate. He actively operated out in the Red Sea and brought back some pretty substantial bounty to Newport. But what's really amazing is that he was openly welcomed and protected by the townspeople. This privateer shamelessly ran the local tavern, causing just endless embarrassment to the officials of the British colony. Just a few years later, we get this absolutely wonderful nugget of history. In 1708, the tavern became the official meeting place for the city council, and thus, the businessman's lunch was essentially born in America. The city councilors dined at the tavern and shamelessly charged all their meals directly to the public treasury. It just goes to show, even after 3 centuries, some things with politicians truly never change.
Following those wild pirate years, the tavern's stewardship went to Mary Mays Nichols, William's sister, and her husband Robert. Now this is a crucial pivot because it kicked off a stunning 200-year period where the tavern remained almost exclusively in the Nichols family. And it was right around 1730 that Jonathan Nichols officially gave the building the iconic name we know today, the White Horse Tavern.
But look, longevity always requires navigating existential threats. By 1776, tensions between the colonies and Britain fully boiled over into the American Revolution, and British forces occupied Newport. The new proprietor, Walter Nichols, was forced to make a pretty drastic choice. Rather than live with the British allied Hessian mercenaries who were aggressively billeted inside his own tavern, he moved his entire family out of Newport. The business was abandoned to the occupying armies, yet somehow, incredibly, the structure survived the war.
Section 3. Surviving the Centuries and Adapting to Modern America. As we bridge the gap between the chaotic, war-torn 1700s and the modern era, we really have to acknowledge that survival for this building was anything but guaranteed. I mean, after the Revolution, America completely transformed. Industries rose, cities massively expanded, and modern life seriously threatened to just pave right over the past.
And as we fast forward into the modern era, things actually look pretty grim for a while. By the mid-1900s, the tavern was really suffering from years of heavy use, neglect, and just serious disrepair. It was dangerously close to being lost forever. But then, in 1954, through the immense generosity of the Van Buren family, the property was acquired by the Preservation Society of Newport County. They meticulously restored it, saving it from demolition. And all that dedication finally culminated in 1972 when it was proudly placed on the National Register of Historic Places.
This whole journey brilliantly illustrates the core mechanism of long-term business survival, which is adaptation. Just compare its uses over time. In the 17th century, its utility was highly functional for a developing colony. It literally housed the General Assembly and even the criminal court. But today, its modern utility is as a beautifully preserved historic landmark and restaurant. It successfully adapted from a bustling political headquarters into this living, breathing museum where you can sit beneath giant, cavernous fireplaces and literally eat history.
Section 4. A roster of historic titans and the broad legacy of ancient American business. Now that we've seen exactly what it takes for a single colonial tavern to survive all this time, let's zoom back out and look at the broader landscape. Because the White Horse Tavern is in rare but very fascinating company.
For those of you who love the data, just check out this roster. Up the road in Massachusetts, Tall Silversmiths dates all the way back to 1690. Back in Rhode Island, the John Stevens shop has been continuously carving stone since 1705. And Caswell Massey, they've been dealing in perfume since 1752. So whether it's crafting silver, carving stone, mixing perfumes, or serving meals, these businesses adapted through the Industrial Revolution and literally every massive societal shift America has ever seen.
Section 5. Witnesses to history. Why these are more than just a business. So, what should we actually take away from all this data and history? Why does understanding this immense longevity actually matter to us sitting here today?
I think this quote from our source material captures it perfectly. Because some places don't just serve people, they serve time itself. Think about it. When you walk through the plain pediment doors of a place like the White Horse Tavern and you sit beneath wooden beams that are over 3.5 centuries old, you aren't just a customer anymore. You're bearing witness to history. You are participating in a continuous human chain of commerce and community that predates the very concept of the United States. It's pretty humbling, isn't it?
It's just an inspiring reminder that with enough adaptability and community support, human endeavors can truly stand the test of time. And that wraps up today's explainer. But remember, the timeline stretches much, much further back globally. So, which historic business should we explore next? Should we look at the incredible Kongo-gumi temple builders in Japan from 578 AD? Or maybe dive deeper into Zildjian's origins in 1623? Let us know what you want to learn next. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.